In the winter skies over Iraq in 1991, a new kind of air war unfolded, one that would rewrite the rules of aerial combat. It was the last great chapter of the Cold War's fighter-jet rivalry, played out not over Europe, but above the burning oil fields of the Persian Gulf. American pilots, flying the most advanced aircraft of their generation, faced off against Soviet-built MiGs in a series of lightning-fast dogfights that lasted mere minutes, yet decided the fate of entire missions. Most people remember Operation Desert Storm for its precision bombing and overwhelming firepower. But hidden within that larger story is a far more intimate battle, pilot against pilot, machine against machine, where split-second decisions meant the difference between life and death. This is the untold story of America's MiG Killers, the men and women who carried the legacy of Vietnam's air duels into the jet age, and proved that even in an era of missiles and radar, the dogfight was far from dead. From the tense prelude to the final kill tally, we'll uncover the tactics, the technology, and the human grit that defined these encounters, and why their lessons still matter today. Long before the roar of afterburners echoed over the deserts of Iraq, the idea of one fighter pilot hunting another in the skies had already been forged in decades of aerial warfare. The MiG Killer legacy did not begin in 1991. It was the culmination of a long, evolving duel between East and West, stretching back to the dawn of the jet age. In the years after World War II, the Soviet Union's Mikoyan-Gurevich Design Bureau produced a series of nimble, hard-hitting fighters, the MiG-15, MiG-17, and later the supersonic MiG-21, that became the backbone of Soviet-aligned air forces. These aircraft were rugged, relatively inexpensive, and exported widely, making them the most common adversary Western pilots would face from Korea to the Middle East. The United States, meanwhile, responded with its own cutting-edge designs: the F-86 Sabre in Korea, the F-4 Phantom II in Vietnam, and later the F-15 Eagle and F-16 Fighting Falcon. Each generation brought faster speeds, more advanced radar, and increasingly lethal missiles. Yet despite the promise of beyond visual range kills, the Vietnam War proved that close-in dogfighting was far from obsolete. American pilots, initially trained to rely on missile engagements, found themselves outmaneuvered by smaller, more agile MiGs, a painful lesson that led to the creation of elite training programs like the U.S. Navy's Top Gun and the Air Force's Red Flag exercises. By the late 1970s and 1980s, the Cold War had settled into a tense standoff. The Soviet Union continued to refine its fighters, introducing the MiG-23 with variable geometry wings and the highly maneuverable MiG-29 Fulcrum. These jets were designed not only to match Western aircraft in speed and climb rate, but to threaten them with advanced air-to-air missiles like the AA-10 Alamo. In the Middle East, these Soviet designs found eager buyers. Iraq, under Saddam Hussein, built one of the largest and most diverse air forces in the region, fielding MiG-21s, MiG-23s, and later MiG-25 Foxbats, the latter capable of blistering speeds over Mach 2.3. Iraqi pilots had combat experience from the long and brutal Iran-Iraq War, where they honed interception tactics and learned to exploit the strengths of their aircraft. For American planners, this was a serious concern. The U.S. had not faced a large Soviet-equipped air force in direct combat since Vietnam. The possibility of confronting Iraqi MiGs in a high-intensity conflict meant that decades of doctrine, training, and technology would be put to the test. The MiG Killer tradition, a term earned by U.S. pilots who downed enemy MiGs in past wars, was about to enter a new chapter, one shaped by lessons from Korea, Vietnam, and the Cold War chess match. The stage was set. Two rival legacies of fighter design, two schools of aerial warfare, and a looming confrontation over the skies of the Persian Gulf. What had begun as a post-war arms race was about to erupt into the last great jet versus jet battles of the 20th century. When Operation Desert Storm began in January 1991, the U.S. Air Force and Navy entered the conflict with aircraft that represented the pinnacle of decades of design evolution: the F-15C Eagle, the F-14A Tomcat, and the F/A-18 Hornet. These were not experimental machines. They were the perfected descendants of lessons learned in Korea, Vietnam, and countless Cold War exercises. Yet for all their sophistication, the true test of their capabilities would come in the crucible of live combat against Iraq's Soviet-built MiGs. The F-15C, in particular, was the embodiment of the air superiority doctrine, designed in the 1970s to ensure the U.S. would never again suffer the kill ratios of early Vietnam. It combined blistering speed, high thrust-to-weight ratio, and advanced radar, the AN/APG-63, capable of detecting and tracking multiple targets at long range. Paired with the AIM-7 Sparrow and AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles, and later the AIM-120 AMRAAM in limited deployment, it gave American pilots the ability to engage before the enemy even knew they were there. The Navy's F-14 Tomcat, with its variable sweep wings and AWG-9 radar, could track up to 24 targets and launch the long-range AIM-54 Phoenix missile. While the Tomcat's primary mission was fleet defense, in Desert Storm, it would also prove a formidable MiG hunter. The F/A-18 Hornet, though smaller, brought agility, modern avionics, and multi-role flexibility, equally capable of striking ground targets and engaging enemy fighters. On the Iraqi side, the MiG-29 Fulcrum was the most modern threat. Introduced in the early 1980s, it was fast, highly maneuverable, and equipped with the AA-10 Alamo and AA-11 Archer missiles. The latter a short-range, high off-bore sight weapon paired with a helmet-mounted sight, giving Iraqi pilots a potential edge in close combat. The MiG-25 Foxbat, though older, could outrun almost anything in the sky, making it a dangerous interceptor. The first air-to-air kill of Desert Storm came on January 17, 1991, when U.S. Navy F/A-18 pilot Lieutenant Commander Mark Fox downed an Iraqi MiG-21 with an AIM-7 Sparrow, moments after delivering his bomb load on target. It was a vivid demonstration of the multi-role capability that modern U.S. fighters had achieved: strike and survive in contested airspace. Over the following days, the F-15Cs of the 58th and 33rd Tactical Fighter Wings began to rack up victories. On that same opening day, Captain Steve Tate and Captain Rick Tellini each scored kills against MiG-29s, using radar-guided Sparrows to strike before the Iraqi pilots could close the distance. These engagements validated years of investment in beyond visual range combat training and technology. Yet, not every encounter was decided at long range. In several cases, Iraqi pilots attempted to close in for a turning fight, where the MiG-29's agility could be dangerous. Here, the skill of U.S. pilots, honed in Red Flag and Top Gun, proved decisive. They used energy management, situational awareness, and coordinated tactics to deny the MiGs their advantage. The breakthroughs of Desert Storm were not in the invention of new aircraft, but in the seamless integration of technology, training, and tactics. AWACS aircraft provided real-time situational awareness, guiding fighters to intercepts with precision. Electronic warfare platforms suppressed enemy radar, allowing U.S. jets to operate with near impunity. And perhaps most importantly, pilots trusted their systems and each other to execute complex engagements at speeds and ranges that would have been unthinkable a generation earlier. By the end of the air campaign, U.S. forces had achieved a staggering kill ratio against Iraqi fighters with no air-to-air losses. The MiG Killer title was once again etched into the history of American aviation, this time in the context of a modern, networked battlefield. The spark had been lit not by a single prototype or invention, but by the first real-world proof that the doctrines of the late Cold War could dominate in actual combat. The air-to-air campaign of Operation Desert Storm began with a precision and confidence that was decades in the making. For the United States and its coalition partners, the skies over Iraq and Kuwait were not just a battlefield. They were the ultimate proving ground for Cold War air combat doctrine. At 2:38 a.m., the first wave of coalition aircraft crossed into Iraqi airspace. The mission was clear: cripple Iraq's ability to coordinate its air defenses before its pilots could mount a serious challenge. The 3 AWACS aircraft, orbiting safely outside missile range, scanned the skies and directed interceptors toward any Iraqi fighters attempting to scramble. The first confirmed kill came within minutes. Captain John Kelk of the 58th Tactical Fighter Squadron, flying an F-15C Eagle, locked onto a MiG-29 Fulcrum climbing out from Al Taqaddum Air Base. Guided by AWACS and using the AN/APG-63 radar, Kelk fired an AIM-7 Sparrow at long range. The missile struck true, the first air-to-air kill of the war. Moments later, Captain Steve Tate downed another Fulcrum in similar fashion. These early victories were not accidents. They were the result of years of training in beyond visual range, BVR tactics, honed at Red Flag and other exercises. The Iraqi pilots, many of them veterans of the Iran-Iraq War, were skilled but disadvantaged. Their radars were less capable, their situational awareness limited without AWACS support, and they were reacting to a battle plan already in motion. The MiG-25 Foxbat was Iraq's fastest interceptor, capable of Mach 2.8 and extreme altitude. Its mission was to threaten high-value coalition assets like AWACS and tankers. On January 19th, Captain Kelk again made history, downing a Foxbat with a Sparrow at long range. Iraqi Foxbat pilots often attempted slash-and-dash tactics, diving in at high speed, launching missiles, then retreating. But AWACS coordination allowed F-15s to position themselves ahead of these runs, cutting off escape routes. By the end of this phase, the Foxbat's psychological edge had evaporated. The MiG-29 Fulcrum's AA-11 Archer missile, paired with a helmet-mounted sight, was a serious close-range danger. Iraqi pilots, who survived the initial BVR exchange, sometimes tried to pull U.S. fighters into turning fights. Where the Fulcrum's agility could be decisive, American pilots countered with disciplined energy tactics, keeping speed high, avoiding prolonged nose-to-nose merges, and using vertical maneuvers to bleed the MiG's energy. Training from Red Flag and Top Gun meant they knew the Fulcrum's strengths and weaknesses intimately. While the Air Force's F-15Cs claimed the majority of kills, the U.S. Navy's F-14 Tomcats and FA-18 Hornets played a critical role in protecting strike packages over the Gulf. On January 21st, Tomcats intercepted and destroyed an Iraqi MiG-23 attempting to threaten a coalition tanker track. Hornets proved their multi-role value spectacularly. Lieutenant CMDR Mark Fox's famous MiG-21 kill, achieved seconds after releasing bombs on target, became a symbol of the modern fighter's versatility. By the end of January, the coalition had established near-total control of the skies. Iraqi pilots were becoming increasingly reluctant to engage, often turning away or fleeing to avoid combat. But the campaign was far from over. February would bring new challenges, coalition contributions, and the final dismantling of Iraq's Air Force. By the start of February 1991, the coalition's grip on the skies over Iraq and Kuwait was tightening. The first 2 weeks had been a relentless demonstration of speed, coordination, and precision. But the campaign was far from over. Iraqi pilots still had aircraft, and in some cases, the will to fight. The second half of the air war would see fewer engagements, but those that occurred were often more desperate, more tactical, and more revealing of the strategic picture. By early February, many Iraqi pilots had adopted a defensive posture. AWACS crews reported multiple instances of MiG-29s and Mirage F-1s taking off, only to turn away before reaching missile range. Coalition dominance in BVR combat had made frontal engagement suicidal. Still, there were exceptions. On February 6th, an F-15C flight from the 33rd Tactical Fighter Wing intercepted two MiG-23 floggers attempting to shadow a strike package. Using coordinated bracket tactics, the Eagles forced the MiGs into a pincer, scoring 2 kills with AM-7s before the Iraqi pilots could disengage. The Royal Saudi Air Force, RSAF, began to feature more prominently in air-to-air engagements. Flying F-15Cs identical to their US counterparts, Saudi pilots demonstrated the value of years of joint training. On February 9th, an RSAF pilot downed an Iraqi Mirage F-1, attempting to intercept a British Tornado strike. These coalition kills were more than symbolic. They proved that the integrated command and control network could seamlessly direct multinational forces into combat, regardless of nationality. As the ground offensive loomed, Iraqi commanders made sporadic attempts to contest the airspace. On February 14th, a pair of MiG-25s attempted a high-speed dash toward a tanker track in the western desert. They were intercepted by F-15Cs from the 53rd TFS, which used altitude advantage and radar locks to force the Foxbats defensive. One was destroyed with a Sparrow. The other escaped at extreme speed. On February 19th, an FA-18 from USS Saratoga intercepted and destroyed a Su-22 fitter, a rare encounter with a ground attack aircraft in air-to-air combat. The kill underscored the Navy's role in keeping strike corridors clear of any threat. The coalition ground offensive began on February 24th, and with it came a final flurry of air activity. Some Iraqi pilots attempted to flee to Iran, seeking to preserve their aircraft. Others, perhaps under orders or driven by pride, rose to fight. On February 27th, the last day of the war, F-15Cs from the 58th TFS intercepted and destroyed 2 Su-25 Frogfoot aircraft attempting to attack coalition ground forces. These would be among the final confirmed air-to-air kills of Desert Storm. By the ceasefire, coalition forces had destroyed more than 30 Iraqi fixed-wing aircraft in air-to-air combat. The U.S. Air Force's F-15Cs accounted for the majority, with a perfect record: 0 losses in aerial combat. The Navy's Tomcats and Hornets, along with Saudi F-15s, contributed additional kills. The kill ratio, effectively infinite in the coalition's favor, was the product of several factors: technological superiority, advanced radars, missiles, and AWACS integration, training, red flag, Top Gun, and years of joint exercises, tactics, coordinated intercepts, disciplined BVR engagements, and energy management in close combat, morale and initiative. Coalition pilots fought with confidence. Iraqi pilots often fought defensively or sought to disengage. The latter stages of the air war confirmed what the opening days had suggested. The era of evenly matched jet versus jet combat was ending. Desert Storm's second half was less about duels and more about enforcing air dominance so completely that the enemy could no longer mount a credible challenge. For the MiG Killer tradition, it was a fitting evolution, from the swirling dogfights of Korea and Vietnam to the networked, precision-controlled battles of the 1990s. The lessons learned would shape US and Allied air doctrine for decades, influencing everything from aircraft design to pilot training syllabi. By the time the last Iraqi aircraft was downed and the ceasefire declared, the air war over the Persian Gulf had done more than secure victory. It had rewritten the global playbook for air combat. Desert Storm's MiG Killer campaign was not just a military success. It was a demonstration that air supremacy could be achieved with near-clinical precision, at unprecedented speed, and with minimal friendly losses. The tipping point came early in the conflict. Within the first 72 hours, coalition pilots had dismantled Iraq's ability to contest the skies. This was not the slow grind of Vietnam, nor the attritional exchanges of Korea. It was a sudden, overwhelming assertion of dominance. The combination of AWACS-directed intercepts, disciplined beyond visual range engagements, and integrated electronic warfare proved so effective that by February, Iraqi pilots were often refusing to engage at all. The world took notice. Air forces from Europe to Asia began reassessing their doctrines, procurement priorities, and training programs. The emphasis shifted toward networked warfare, the seamless integration of sensors, shooters, and command assets. Nations that had once focused on sheer numbers of aircraft now sought quality, interoperability, and advanced avionics. For the United States, Desert Storm became the definitive proof of the first look, first shot, first kill philosophy. The MiG Killer tradition, once rooted in close-range dogfighting, had evolved into a doctrine where situational awareness and long-range precision were the decisive factors. This shift influenced not only fighter design, with stealth, sensor fusion, and data links becoming standard, but also the way wars would be fought in the decades to come. In industry, defense contractors leveraged the Desert Storm narrative to market new generations of fighters, missiles, and radar systems. Politically, the campaign reinforced the perception of U.S. air power as unmatched, shaping alliances and deterrence, strategies well into the 21st century. The skies over Iraq in 1991 had shown that air dominance was no longer just a supporting element of warfare. It was the foundation upon which modern military success would be built. In the 3 decades since Desert Storm, the legacy of the MiG Killers has not faded, it has evolved. The air-to-air dominance demonstrated in 1991 became the benchmark for modern air forces. But the tools, tactics, and threats have changed dramatically. The F-15C Eagle, the star of Desert Storm's air-to-air campaign, continued to serve well into the 21st century, but it did not stand still. Upgrades to radar systems, such as the AN/APG-63 Soviet-3 AESA radar, vastly improved detection range, target tracking, and resistance to jamming. Missile technology advanced as well. The AIM-120 AMRAAM became the standard BVR weapon, with improved range and guidance, while the AIM-9X Sidewinder introduced high off-bore sight targeting and thrust vectoring for unmatched agility in close combat. The Navy's FA-18 Hornet gave way to the FA-18EF Super Hornet, offering greater range, payload, and survivability. Meanwhile, the stealthy F-22 Raptor entered service in 2005, embodying the first look, first shot, first kill philosophy with sensor fusion, super cruise, and extreme maneuverability. Modern air combat is no longer defined solely by fighter versus fighter duels. The same pilots who train for air superiority also conduct precision strikes, suppression of enemy air defenses, CAD, and close air support. Networked warfare, linking fighters, AWACS, drones, and ground units in real time, has become the norm. The MiG Killer ethos now extends beyond manned fighters. Unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, like the MQ-9 Reaper and Loyal Wingman concepts, are reshaping the battlespace, providing persistent surveillance and even air-to-air capability in experimental programs. The Desert Storm model of air dominance has been studied and, in some cases, emulated worldwide. Nations such as China and Russia have invested heavily in advanced fighters like the J-20 and Su-57, along with sophisticated surface-to-air missile systems designed to challenge U.S. air superiority. Coalition interoperability remains a cornerstone of U.S. strategy. Joint exercises like Red Flag, Pitch Black, and Anatolian Eagle ensure that Allied pilots can operate seamlessly together. Just as they did in 1991, while technology has advanced, so have the challenges. Stealth aircraft face evolving radar detection methods. Electronic warfare is now a two-way contest, with adversaries capable of jamming or spoofing coalition systems. Rules of engagement in modern conflicts often demand visual identification before firing, complicating the use of long-range weapons. There is also the ethical dimension. The ability to dominate the skies brings with it the responsibility to minimize civilian harm and avoid escalation. In an era of instant global media, every engagement is scrutinized in real time. Today, the MiG Killer tradition lives on in the professionalism of US and Allied fighter pilots. While the adversary may no longer always be a MiG, the mindset, mastery of the aircraft, the tactics, and the battle space remains unchanged. From the stealthy patrols of the F-22 over contested zones to the multinational air policing missions in Europe and Asia, the principles forged in Desert Storm continue to define what it means to own the skies. Before Desert Storm, air superiority was often seen as a prerequisite for victory, important but not necessarily decisive on its own. After Desert Storm, that perception changed forever. The MiG Killer campaign of 1991 proved that absolute control of the skies could shape the entire course of a war, collapsing an opponent's ability to fight effectively before the ground battle had even begun. The contrast between the world before and after was stark. In Vietnam, US pilots had fought for every engagement, often at a disadvantage in close combat. In Desert Storm, they dictated the terms from the first night, striking at will, denying the enemy the initiative, and doing so with a kill ratio that bordered on the unprecedented. This was not just a military achievement, it was a psychological one. Iraqi pilots, aware of the coalition's reach and precision, often chose not to fight at all. The legacy extended far beyond the Gulf. Air forces worldwide studied the campaign, adopting its lessons in networked warfare, AWACS integration, and disciplined BVR tactics. The emphasis shifted from sheer numbers of aircraft to the quality of sensors, weapons, and pilot training. The MiG Killer tradition, once defined by swirling dogfights, had evolved into a doctrine of information dominance and precision engagement. It also inspired the next generation of aircraft and systems. Stealth fighters like the F-22 Raptor and F-35 Lightning II were conceived with Desert Storm's lessons in mind. See first, shoot first, and remain unseen. The integration of drones, data links, and real-time intelligence all trace their operational confidence back to 1991's success. In historical terms, Desert Storm's air campaign stands as a turning point, the moment when the jet versus jet battles of the Cold War era gave way to the networked, multi-domain air warfare of the modern age. The MiG Killers of 1991 didn't just win their war, they redefined how wars would be fought. The MiG Killer legacy, forged in the skies over Iraq in 1991, is not a relic of the past. It is a living doctrine, evolving with each leap in technology and each shift in the global security landscape. As we look ahead, the nature of air combat is poised for another transformation, one that may redefine what it means to own the skies. Fifth-generation fighters like the F-22 Raptor and F-35 Lightning II already embody the Desert Storm lesson. See first, shoot first, remain unseen. But the next decade will push this further. Advances in sensor fusion will allow pilots and autonomous systems to process vast streams of data from satellites, drones, and ground sensors in real time, creating a battle space picture so complete that the element of surprise may vanish entirely. Unmanned combat aerial vehicles, UCAVs, are moving from experimental to operational. Loyal wingman drones, designed to fly alongside manned fighters, will extend sensor range, carry extra weapons, and even act as decoys. In the future, the first kill in an air battle may be scored by an AI-controlled aircraft, with human pilots directing the fight from a safe distance. As stealth becomes the standard, so too will counter-stealth. Low-frequency radars, passive detection systems, and AI-assisted signal analysis are being developed to spot even the most elusive aircraft. Electronic warfare, the silent battle for control of the electromagnetic spectrum will be as decisive as missiles and guns. Potential adversaries are fielding advanced fighters like China's J-20 and Russia's Su-57, along with integrated air defense networks designed to deny access to contested regions. The next MiG Killer era may not be about dueling over open desert, but about penetrating heavily defended airspace where every move is contested. Will the future of air combat be dominated by unmanned systems? Will hypersonic weapons make traditional dogfighting obsolete? And in an age of cyber warfare, could the next great air victory be won without a single missile fired? From the tense radar-guided duels of the first night to the final intercepts over a retreating Iraqi Air Force, the MiG Killer story of Desert Storm is more than a chapter in aviation history. It is a testament to preparation meeting opportunity. It showed the world that air dominance, once hard-fought and uncertain, could be achieved with precision, speed, and near-total control. We've traced the journey from the Cold War's simmering rivalry through the crucible of 1991's dogfights to the modern era of stealth, drones, and networked warfare. The lessons of those 6 weeks still echo in every fighter squadron briefing, every multinational exercise, and every new aircraft design. The pilots who flew those missions carried forward a tradition, not just of victory, but of mastery over the most unforgiving arena in warfare. If this story has given you a new appreciation for the skill, courage, and innovation behind America's MiG Killers, then let's keep the conversation going. Like this video to help it reach more history and aviation fans. Share it with friends who love untold military stories. Comment your thoughts. Which moment or lesson stood out most to you? And subscribe for more deep dives into the battles, breakthroughs, and people who shaped our world. The skies of 1991 may be quiet now, but their legacy still flies.